order.
Thank you very much, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the January 14th, 2020 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. We have a couple of matters of formality. First, if you wish to address the commission, we invite it, we encourage it, ask any question, make any comment you'd wish to, but please approach the table and use a microphone, identify yourself, because we do keep a record. Right here we have a magical tape recorder, and that is our compliance with the open meeting law, in addition to you being televised. So we'd ask you to be somewhat formal and identify yourself. Our second matter of formalities, we introduce ourselves.
Judith Darrell Kemp.
And my name is John Kiernan.
I'm Arthur Doyle.
Hi, I'm Wendy Garpo.
We have a quorum tonight. We do not have a conservation agent, so you'll have to bear with us. We don't have the ability to project maps on the screen. Steve Ivas is traveling, and Kathy Bowen is ill tonight, so we wish her well. But bear with us if we're slow on documenting. We've got all the documents here. But with that, let's start with notice of intent, 1017 Brook Road. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Cameron Campbell with DeSalle Brick Sol, the civil engineers for the project. And that's Scott Morrison from Ecotech. He is the wetlands scientist that flagged the wetlands for the project. And we also have Brian Crowley, the homeowner here.
Great, thank you very much. Tell us what the project is about.
So right now on the lot, there's an existing single-family abandoned building.
With that, so maybe people could get a peek of it in the audience and such, and you can see it, we have copies.
Yeah. The single-family existing building on the lot right now with a dirt driveway that comes off of the butter's pavement driveway. There is a bordering vegetated wetland in the back, which is down a very steep slope, down at elevation around 28, and then the yard up top is elevation 57. And it also the site's also within the 200-foot riverfront for Unquity Brook, and also the inner riparian zone for Unquity Brook. There is a shed existing within the 200-foot riverfront already.
All right, and this backs up to the Milton Cemetery?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just trying to orient the public. I know where it is, but I'm just trying to orient the public.
Yeah, it's on Brook Road, but it's accessed off of a private drive that comes around, and you access it off of that. Brook
Just
Road,
the very back of the
Yeah.
lot.
yeah, the very
That's
back.
the cemetery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Brook Road, the wetland is right on Brook Road.
Does, Scott, do you know, I had asked as an administrative effort to assist the fire station study committee to do a mapping, and Steve Ivas actually did it as a courtesy to the fire station location study committee. Mm-hmm. And that was a little bit further towards Center Street, the intersection where Fontbonne is.
Yep.
Have you seen that mapping? Because I think they're going to come somewhat close together where you map.
Those two wetland systems?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a long ways though.
Okay.
Unquity Brook flows this way, so I think if they connect, it would be well. I've walked kind of through.
No, go down to the Brook Road side.
Brook Road, this wetland flows towards Unquity Brook. Yeah. So
But
it
where
flows-
does it start? The Center Street is off to your left, is it not?
It is, yeah.
Yeah, this is essentially the top of it,
Okay.
that wetland system. And then it drains this way, ultimately going into Unquity Brook, which is on the other side of the property.
Right, but you know where the corner is of Center Street? It's where the George Burke, is
Yeah,
it
it's up
George Burke?
further.
James Burke Memorial area is. There are flags there. There's a headstone. The former congressman. Well, that's the area that we were looking at, and I think Steve actually did some flagging there. I'm just curious as to whether or not you're.
You know what? Give me a second. Let him do the presentation, and I can look through the files
Okay.
to see if I can.
I'm assuming it's the same. Because you
Yeah.
guys think alike, and I appreciate that, but we've got another map that's existing.
Yeah, let me take a quick look.
the project is to demolish the existing house and shed that is there. And the shed is within the 200-foot riparian area. And then to build a single-family house in place of the existing one, with a detached barn, an attached garage, and then an in-ground pool. And to access the lot, we propose to sweep the driveway down towards the bottom of where the private drive meets our lot, so that we're not going right into the neighbor's driveway.
Mhm.
But that brings the driveway into the 200-foot riverfront area.
And does the driveway connect to Brook Road, or does it go all the way over to Center Street?
It connects back to Brick Road, it loops all the way around.
Loops around?
That-
Okay.
yeah.
All right, because there's a drive that actually comes in off of Center Street, and it's a neighboring lot, but it's that very large home that actually used to be used by the Milton School Department. The superintendent's office was there for a while. But is there any connection to that?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And it swings down onto Brook Road?
Yes. Well, that was my question. I know it comes in off of Center Street, because up to where the school committee took over,
It's
the
the same
school
one
department.
I've actually taken it, coming to this meeting, when they've had one of the Milton runs.
Oh, really?
They had everything cordoned off, and the police said, sneak up this way.
Okay. All right. So there is a connection?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I know we may know this.
Not to this, not to this property. I don't,
No, I know that, but
Right.
there is a drive that
Yeah.
does make that connection.
yeah, it goes back into Center Street.
Right. All right. So is any of the construction, I know the shed there, and I know the driveway is going to go through the 200-foot riverfront, but with the new building, that appears to be outside of our jurisdiction?
Completely outside of the
Okay.
riverfront.
And is the shed just being demolished, or is it going to stay there?
Demolished,
All right.
taken out.
All right. So what do you have for erosion controls for the demolition part of this?
The red line around here, it's mulch wattles set up around the front, and then all the way to the back at the top of the slope, going down to the wetland along the road.
You know, what about this, I see an asphalt berm, I'm on 3 of 6 of
That
your
is,
sheets?
yeah, that is
That
within the
existing?
proposed driveway, it's not existing. The proposed driveway will have a berm along this edge to stop the water from flowing off the driveway and into the yard. And that way we can collect the driveway in this little landscape area. There will be an underground recharge system where the water will collect and infiltrate into the
Okay,
ground.
what number are you on?
This is page 3.
That's where I am, okay. All right, my problem is this one's not in color. You said you've got it in red there.
The erosion control?
Yes.
This is, it's on page 2.
Are you looking at two?
There'll be a gray and black dash
What can you
line.
tell us? Yeah, I don't see the line in red, but I see the trees. So can you tell us about the trees that you contemplate being removed?
The 4 up here
Yes.
will, somewhat close to the proposed house, and we propose to put a drinking water well in that area. And then the ones around the shed will kind of be in the way of taking the shed down, so it'll,
So do you have an inventory of the number of trees you're taking down?
within the riparian zone,
Yes.
we propose to take 10 trees down.
10. And do you have a landscape plan for replanting?
We do not at the moment.
Okay. You may want to be thinking
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
And the stone apron is outside of our jurisdiction, correct?
Yes. It's where the existing driveway comes in now, which is a dirt driveway.
Understood. All right, I think we should take a site visit.
Yes,
Everybody agree?
definitely, sure.
And that's, if you're unfamiliar, we usually go out Saturday morning. The old days, we used to go out at 8 o'clock. The new generation is now saying, take it a little later, so 8:30, 9, yeah.
Yep, yes, please.
Like the old days, Arthur, remember? So what's a good Saturday?
How about the 25th, a week from this Saturday, the 25th?
Right, Ingrid said that she could not make this Saturday,
Okay.
but she could make other dates.
And the one after that is the 1st.
Whatever, I
Either
can
one
I
is
can do
good
the
for me.
25th, is good for me.
25 is okay.
25, Wendy?
Yes.
All right, how about that, 25th?
Should be
Is that
fine
good?
with us. Yeah.
So we can meet, what's the best way? The existing driveway, is it off of,
So you go up the private road in the back, and it comes around, and you have to come up this, the abutter's driveway, and there's a little inlet into a dirt driveway, and there's plenty of parking. Just,
Okay.
just a dirt parking area.
do you know the number of the house that is the abutter's drive? I presume that there's an easement for that driveway?
Yeah, it's right at the,
10:15.
10:15.
10:15, yeah, I'm a resident there.
Beautiful, okay.
There's about 5 to 6 houses on that driveway. It's not
Okay.
just one. It's like gated, or it has like columns on the outside with the house numbers on it.
Okay,
Yeah, it loops all the way around, there's houses all along it as it comes in.
all right, great.
So you're putting in a well behind the house in this riparian zone?
And, yeah, it'll,
Provide water to the house?
yes.
Did you mark where it's going?
Yeah, it's on the sheet,
Great.
sheet 406.
Why aren't you tying into water on Brook Road?
You'd have to go through the wetland to tie into the,
That's good?
On my map,
Yeah,
Wetland
you'd have to go
all?
through that wetland, I think.
not here.
Yeah, maybe you could go by it, I don't know.
Can't go by, it looks like it ends. No, you can't go by
you're
it?
going down a super steep hill and you'd be within, to bring a machine in
I don't
there.
think you identified yourself.
Oh,
I know who
sorry
you are.
about that.
That's okay.
Scott Morrison from Ecotech.
Great.
You are correct that the wetland stops shy of the property line, but I think it's so close that you'd be doing an excavation down a very steep slope with a machine would need to be, I think, partially within that wetland to get to make that connection. So there'd be quite a substantial amount of disturbance to get down there and to excavate and get that.
You know, Scott, as you go along Brook Road now in this direction, which I think is west, basically, and you keep going, that whole
Wait a
area...
minute, where? You're going towards St. Agatha's?
No, the other,
No.
the
No,
other
that's-
direction.
That's St. Agatha's, that way.
No, this is
It's Font Pond.
Font Bond. Yes,
Right.
and beyond...
Center Street is where my pen is.
Right. And isn't St. Agnes down here?
No, it's that way.
No.
No.
No, you're going up to Randolph Ave up here. Okay, are we that turned around?
Yeah.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
because it's upside down.
No,
This
but
is-
we're on this side of Brook Road. We're on the same side as Font Bond.
No,
No, the other side.
the other side of the road.
The other side.
Yeah.
I
Right.
have
So
it
that's, if you
backwards.
take a
Okay.
right out of here, you're gonna head towards St. Agatha's.
Okay,
And this way would be towards Font Pond and Center Street.
okay.
And if you come up left on Center Street, you'd pass the cemetery. The cemetery kind of hooks around.
Yes,
And that's why
right,
the
right.
cemetery's
Okay.
over here.
I just got turned around.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good. I still can't find the well.
It's page 406, it'll be, if you're looking at the front of the proposed building, just off the right corner. It's a black dot, it's,
Oh, it's not my, I see the black dot. Okay, I got it. And is that, we had one issue that the slurry from the well digging, this is Indian Cliffs, and the slurry ended up in the drainage system, and it ended up in the stream that runs down between the Wendell Park drives. So do you have any kind of a plan? I don't know how you drill a well, to be honest with you, but I know when the drill goes down, the slurry comes up, and we did have a problem with that.
It does, but in this case here, when there will be a machine, they'll be lining a casing till they hit, it'll be cased in metal until they hit bedrock, and then they'll dig down from there. In the wash that comes up in the the fines are within the area that's surrounded by the filter mitt. So once that's done, that'll be cleared out and removed.
All right, I didn't read all of it. I know it's a pretty extensive application, but is that in that? Is there any reference to how that drilling is going to, how do we protect the environment? Because that slurry was a disaster. I mean, it was fixed, but it actually did contaminate the stream.
I don't know,
There's
I
no-
have it at my house, and it does leave an area probably about 10 feet in diameter with like the stone fines and stuff.
Yes.
But again, that's inside the erosion control.
Yep.
So we will have
So
erosion
it-
control around it so that it
Yeah,
doesn't.
I don't see the erosion control around it from here. I know where the, yeah, 4.
I
Yeah,
can
if you
show
look
you
at
on,
that protect
I can
the
show you
well?
on this one. So
Okay.
On page 5,
So the red line's the erosion control.
Okay.
That's the proposed well.
1, 2, 3, 4, yeah.
Okay, so it is,
It's close.
all right. Well, we'll be able to see it better, because I don't know which way I'm not very good at looking at elevations here. I'm looking at 54, so it's going
The brook.
down towards, it's not going towards the wetlands. But I do see your elevation 54, 53, 52, 51.
Yeah, there's a low spot
50.
existing in the front yard. So if anywhere, it'll go there. It kind of plateaus out before it drops back down to the brook.
But isn't it heading towards your recharge Caltech?
Yes, but the well should be drilled before everything's built.
Well, that would be helpful if we had that detail, okay?
Yep.
Because what I'm looking at is that you've got a proposed Caltech recharge chamber, and you've got potential slurry going down towards that.
Yep.
And you might need another, it's not a big deal, but I think you might need another erosion control to
Yeah, just
separate the
An
slurry.
isolated little area of
Yes.
erosion control.
Correct. All right, I don't think that's a big deal, but it might be helpful.
I had a question, roughly how far away is the proposed well from the existing cesspool?
Say probably 25 feet.
It's not very far.
Yeah. So well, we
I know
have
they're deep.
we have room to play with the location of the well. It's still not set in stone where he wants it.
So that's proposed.
When was the last time someone lived in this building, do you know?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
I believe it was in 2006. Really? Yeah. It's been vacant for over a decade at least. I would say 14 years.
I have a question for Scott. It is Scott, right?
Yes.
I understand what you were saying about the potential impact of putting a water line to Brook Road and that it would have to cross the wetland. I understand there could be some temporary impacts to the wetland from that. But I'm concerned, thinking more long-term, that a well is going to be drawing from the groundwater for decades. And being so close to these two wetlands, I'm wondering if you could talk about the potential impact of a well on the wetland resources.
Yeah, keep in mind, so if you do, as proposed, you've got a well and a septic system. So essentially, you're drawing from the well, using that water, and then it's entering the leach field and leaching back into the ground. So it's essentially a closed loop. If you were to connect to water, you'd be taking off-site water, using that, and then putting that into the septic system. So you'd actually be pulling water from outside onto the site. And then using that for infiltration. So I don't think there's that much difference either way. Like I said, drilling the well, you're kind of keeping everything on site, kind of, it doesn't really cycle through, but what you're pulling out of the ground, you're putting back in. So those are pretty equal, the way this is set up with a, typical well and septic system. Whereas if you do off-site, you'd be pulling water from off-site and then putting it through the septic system.
I can see that it would be a 1-to-1 ratio, water being drawn out of the ground and then being put back in if it was only being used in the house, but I'm assuming that there's probably going to be an irrigation system as well, and a significant...
pool.
And a pool. And so a lot of that water being drawn out of the ground is going to evaporate.
There will be, yeah, no doubt. I don't think depending on how much irrigation water you use, I don't
I'm
think there'd be-
confused though, because, I mean, those are good questions, and I see that you're cutting and capping the water service at the property line. So you wouldn't have to go all the way down to Brook Road to put in a new line. What's the existing water service? I'm on 2 of 6.
Because I talked to John Thompson, Jim DeSalle from DeSalle Bark and Associates. Right now, the existing house is tapped off, and it looks like there's an old plan showing 2 lines, 1.5 inches, I believe, and a 2-inch line.
There's a 2-inch line here, yeah.
That is tapped off the neighbor's line. How it was done, when it was done, I have no idea. I'm assuming that this existing house was originally a bond to the big house, going way back when. This water line for this house now is a 6-inch line that cuts through the cemetery and taps in way over here. We've talked to John Thompson, there's no way we can tie into that, and there's no way we can tie into Brook Road. So that's why we put the well in.
But the 2-inch line is already tapping, that is to the neighbor, the 2-inch line is already tapping into the 6-inch line that goes through the cemetery,
Yeah,
right?
which is the neighbor's.
Right.
How it, like I said, how it's been done.
So why couldn't you tap into the 6-inch water main? I mean, the neighbor did.
Speak for that.
Oh, can you come forward and use the mic?
Yes.
Thanks.
So my name is David Sugarbaker. I'm a current resident at 1015.
And where's 1015?
1015
on
is this house right here.
that? Thank you.
Yes. Originally, when we moved into the house and were trying to draw water from the main line, it was undrinkable. So we actually also put in a well. So we're not drawing water from the main line that you're speaking of. We're on well water.
All right, well, I guess that answers the question. I don't know why it would be undrinkable. That's
It
a
was
little,
just terrible quality. We had it tested. When we moved in, it was undrinkable water. It smelled, yeah.
well, help me out town-wise. That's a 6-inch main. That's a big,
It's a 6-inch private line, and like I said, it cuts across, and how it showed up.
Old pipes, really old
It's an old
pipes.
pipe.
Really old.
do you know where else it feeds?
Nothing.
It just cuts through the
It just
cemetery?
cuts across to the, whatever that road is back there.
Center Street?
No, it's, I forget the name of it. No, it's,
Oh, it goes up and around, off of Brook Road, and it kind
Yeah.
of circles back.
but it's, like I said, it's probably about 1,000 feet, and it's probably all, it's a 6-inch line, it might be, but it's probably tuberculated down to probably a 1-inch line.
What does that mean? Tuberculated.
It's loaded with,
Clogged up.
with calcium and stuff like that, so it's,
Okay, tuberculated. All right. All right, thanks.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand. Why is it that you can't tap into the water main on Brook Road? You said you spoke to somebody, Tom something,
Engineer.
and
the
he-
town engineer.
The town engineer.
John Thompson.
but why? Why did he say that?
John never, sorry. Brian Crowley, I'm the owner. This is my wife Fiona.
Welcome.
Thank you. So I spoke to John Thompson, this town engineer, about all this water problem. And he said that I can't go to Brook Road because you're going through a brook. And the same with, is it Unquinity? This, yeah, this one back here. He says I can't go here either because I'm essentially digging up the brook to tie into the street. I think it's called Edward Lane. Yeah. So the only option that I have that makes sense is to bore the well. After speaking to David, and hearing that it was undrinkable and not safe, and when I spoke to, and I brought that attention to John Thompson, and he said like that line is probably 100+ years old, and they're actually going to cut it and take it out of service.
I understand that, but the brook is is where the 6-inch line is. And I understand what you just said, but what's the matter with Brook Road? I think that was your question.
Because
There's
you've
a wetland
That is
right
the
on the
question.
street.
But that's what we talked about initially, that
Yes.
the wetland stops. It's not, the brook is on the high end.
The wetland,
No.
the wetland stops within 5 feet of the property line. To be
Right.
able to dig through there with a machine, you're gonna do a lot of damage to that wetland.
Yeah, because you're gonna,
Remember that quote when we get to 7-Eleven. Okay, you get 5 feet to dig a trench. I'm going to quote you on that one, okay?
You
Remember
have,
that.
you have 5 feet to dig a trench, but the machine needs room to move around.
You are exactly correct, I get it. But am I correct, though, that the stream that John Thompson was talking about is at the
It's
other end?
Unquity Brook. It's
Yes.
going the opposite direction.
Correct.
So you can't tap that way either because you'd cross the brook.
I understand that, okay.
But Mr. Thompson is speaking from an engineering perspective. And is he saying from an engineering perspective, it's impossible to cut that close to the wetland to tap into the water main? Because we're concerned about the conservation perspective. And so you told me that, you had said, sir, that Mr. Thompson said, that he told you that you couldn't cross the wetland to tap into the water main. So my question is he speaking from an engineering perspective, or is he speaking from a conservation perspective?
I don't know.
He's the engineer, so I'm sure it's an engineering perspective.
But isn't it possible? I mean,
It would do a lot of, just the work to bring the machine in here.
Yeah.
You're gonna be damaging the wetland. Because the machine's big. The machine's big enough where to dig a 5-foot deep trench, 5 feet wide, to be able to get down there and lay the line, you're gonna end up encroaching onto the wetland while digging and having to move the machine around. It'll damage all that wetland when you're there.
yes, I understand.
I think you guys are going to get a better picture of all of this when you do the site visit. Because this part of the property is like a 60-degree slope that's kind of impossible for a machine to work on.
Also, digging here, you'll have to de-water, because the groundwater, if the wetlands has water sitting in it now, there's gonna be a lot of groundwater issues.
That's why they call it Brook Road.
I understand it does have the potential to significantly impact the wetland. What I'm trying to weigh is if that impact is less or more than the long-term impact of putting a well that's going to last for potentially another 100 years, drawing the same groundwater that's presumably feeding those two wetland resources.
Do we know that would be the same groundwater?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, we're up high, so to get down, you're hitting groundwater probably down by the wetland area. But, I mean, it's a
Likely how
single-family
deep?
house, so I mean, they're not gonna be drawing a ton of water. It's not like a commercial building where they're just pumping water constantly out of the ground. And any irrigation system, you will lose some to evaporation, but a lot of it will soak back into the ground. That's, when you're irrigating the lawn, it's gonna soak into the ground and go through. The soils on site are a sandy gravel. I did 2 perks out there. It's less than 2 minutes an inch, so the water just runs right through it. So any water that falls on site is going back into the site, into the ground.
Unfortunately, a lot of irrigation systems aren't used the way that they are intended, and the majority of the water actually never touches the grass, is my experience. So that's why I'm trying to figure out which one is the less impact.
I understand.
Just a question, is your concern because the well is too close to the buffer zone?
No, it's just.
Not necessarily.
No.
It's
Now
the fact that,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
but yeah, you're right. I think we're thinking on the same page. It's not so much the actual, I don't think it would necessarily make too much of a difference where you put your well on the site. It's just that you have two wetland resources within close proximity.
The other thing to keep in mind is that when you drill in the well's taking water from like 200 feet deep. It's not taking water from, you
That
know,
was my
that
point,
surface.
question about the depth of the well.
Yeah,
It would
it's
be below,
well below.
Yeah.
Because you can be
Yeah,
well
that's
into
Cesspool or the
bedrock.
leaching field, right.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. My comment on the drilling of the well is a temporary concern. And that's easily addressed just by additional erosion controls?
I understood that,
Okay.
yeah, and I get that. and
Okay.
That's fine.
All right. And what about the leaching field and the proximity to the pool? I know the pool's not going to leak. Is that the most appropriate place to put the leaching field? I'm on
It meets,
4 of 6
it meets the Title V distance requirement.
from both the house and the pool?
Yes. The field only has to be 20 feet from a house. I believe it's similar to a pool. It could be 50 feet, but either way, it meets the distance. You're just worried about the water leaching into the pool if the pool has a leak. But Title V requires, I believe it's 20. It's the same as a foundation, essentially. And it's well allowed at 20 feet.
All right. It just looks like there's a lot of property there.
It's, the further we go back with this, the closer you get to the buffer zone, and it also drops dramatically. The
Elevation.
site drops dramatically.
Yeah, it's like a
Cliff.
60-degree slope.
Okay.
And we're cutting this backyard already to decrease the amount of cover over the system, because this is a high spot, and it's a long run from the house to begin with, and the longer you go, the deeper the system has to be to get the slope in the pipe. So the further back we go, the deeper the system has to be, and we'll have to cut more to get, because you're only allowed to have 3 feet of cover over the field, according to Title V.
I understand, and I also understand the limit of our jurisdiction. I'm just putting those issues for the benefit of the homeowner, you know, something to think about.
What are you going to be using the barn for?
Man cave.
Oh, you're not putting cows or sheep or anything?
Sorry?
No cows or sheep or
Oh,
horses
no,
or anything
no,
like that?
No.
So there'll be water out here as well?
Yeah, there's a little bathroom in it.
Yeah, it'll be tapped off of the main house.
All right, any other questions of commissioners? Understanding that we will do a site walk. Okay. Are there abutters, members of the public that have a question or wish to make a comment? All right, so we will see.
I would just make a comment that we're in, those of us who are living at 1015 are in support of him moving his drive, so that he doesn't have to use our driveway, which goes into our garages. So we're supporting his proposed project.
Good, all right, well, that's pretty helpful, and that's important to us.
John, I just want to pass along a compliment on the quality of your and thoroughness of your notice of intent.
Thank you.
Would that they all came this way.
You're right, that's true, thank you. All right, so we'll see you on the 25th.
At 8?
I wish. How about 8:30, is that all right? Sure.
Oh, I thought you were going to say no.
8:30, okay?
8:30 is good, okay.
Good? Wendy?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Yeah, did you have another question? Looks like you were being very
I do.
thoughtful.
I do. For gentleman who's the neighbor.
Yes.
You had said that you were in favor of them adding a separate driveway
Yes.
so that you wouldn't have to continue sharing.
Yes.
Are you also in favor in keeping it as a shared driveway, which would basically keeping a similar footprint of the existing dirt driveway?
I don't understand the question.
Would you be in favor of continuing to let your neighbors share your driveway?
Of course, yes, if it's impossible for him to put his drive in. Of course we allow Brian to use that stretch of drive. I'm just saying, it makes more sense from my perspective, and I think from his perspective, given the lay of the land, to have the drive, to have him put in his driveway further up.
It's, the reason I ask is that, without having seen the site and the lay of the land, from the perspective of the wetland, what's being proposed is a lot more impervious surface that's actually within the buffer zone of the brook.
I can speak to that if you. So the way this is graded, and there's going to be a berm around this driveway, an asphalt berm, and the way it's graded, it actually from here to here actually all flows to this point.
Okay.
And there'll be a little area drain with underground recharge, and it'll all go into here. And then anything up around here actually goes to an existing low spot. This actually plateaus out and then drops down to the brook. So we're not changing any of the runoff that's going to the brook. We're not touching, because we're all uphill and it actually slopes back into the site. So any of the runoff that goes to the brook is going to stay going to the brook, and any of the proposed runoff that we're creating is going to stay on site.
The drain that's in the middle of the island, are you talking like a rain garden or something more engineered?
There will be underground chambers
Okay.
with stone, and then above is however he landscapes it with a little area drain. So when it'll be bowled out, so that the water will all congregate to the area drain and go into the ground.
Okay. Okay.
What is
Thank
the
you both.
proposed asphalt berm on the side? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's from this side of the house, around the edge of the driveway to about here, to where the driveway cuts back. All of this berm is to just make sure the water doesn't leave the driveway and go into the grass or untreated or anything. It will go into the infiltration structure where it can get its TSS removal and treatment.
And how high is that berm?
It's a Cape Cod berm, like a 3-inch typical Cape Cod berm.
That's all.
Anything else? All right, hearing nothing from the public, last chance. Then we'll see you on the 25th at 8:30, Saturday morning. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, right out. That was very thorough.
Yeah, it is. It was a pleasant read, too. It was well written. It was a pleasant read.
Next on the agenda is donation of land from the Milton Conservation Trust. Is there anyone here from the Milton Conservation Trust? We received a donation from the Milton Conservation Trust. And remember that they gave us the deed and conservation restrictions to a number of properties last year.
Where is this land, John? I forgot.
This is a $12,000 donation.
Oh, it's money.
It's money.
Oh.
Right, so we had to, we have to take a vote to accept it. Should we accept it?
Did we not do that on our last site work?
We
I thought we
discussed it.
did.
We discussed it. I don't think we took it because, one of the things, we need to know where it's going. And I think somebody had suggested, I think Kathy Bowen had suggested they go into the tree fund, and I was opposed to
I
that.
oppose it, too.
Right, and I think it should go into our general fund. And not necessarily the revolving fund. The revolving fund is one that we're limited to $15,000 per year, but we've got so many different accounts. And we could put it into an account, they're all to be used for conservation purposes. But I think that's easy enough to do, to figure out which account to put it
It'd be
in.
wonderful to have that flexibility
Yes.
to use it for whatever might come down the road.
Correct, like the purchase of open space. And I think one of the things that we should do is pass a resolution of saying thank you to the Milton Conservation Land Trust.
Yes,
And
wonderful.
I'll draft a letter, and we can all sign it, and send it to, and the most recent trustees, John Cronin and Peter Wendell, and Peter
Jeffries.
Jeffries, yeah, and Ted Wendell. And, I mean, they've been stalwarts in terms of
Yes.
protecting the resources of the town. So I will draft that letter and we
Good,
can all,
yeah,
we can
yeah.
all sign it.
John, could you also, and this is administrative, put together and send out as an email, because it's administrative, an explanation of all the different accounts, because sometimes I think I don't have a clear idea of, and you're more involved with town meeting and such. Could you just send out, maybe
Yes.
along with that, so we have a clear idea of, this.
What we've got?
What we've got and where they are and which one gets approved every year and which one is automatic, that sort of thing. Would you have time to do that?
Yes, I will, and unfortunately, I did not bring it. I think at our last meeting, Steve Ivas had asked me the same thing, and I
Okay.
brought it. And there's actually a budget printout that shows it.
Okay.
I think we've got about $160,000 in the various funds.
Well, maybe just send us a copy then of what's
Sure,
there.
absolutely.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good
So
idea.
do you want a motion?
Yes.
of-
Right, to pass a resolution, thanking the Milton Conservation Land Trust,
So moved.
Accepting the funds.
accepting the funds, and with thanks and gratitude. And I've got to write an annual report, and last year I thanked them for the land that they had given us. So I'll put it in the annual report this year, thanking them again for their contribution of funds.
Excellent.
John, for the benefit of me as a newcomer and for the public who may not know, could you just give a little more background about the Milton Conservation Trust? I'm not familiar with them.
Well, they disbanded, and they had the deed to actually land, the deeded fee simple deed to the land, and they also had conservation restrictions that had been deeded to them as well. And they decided from an administrative point of view that the Wildlands Trust, based in Plymouth, was the more appropriate agency because they had staff and administrative support to actually monitor the land, the use of the land, make sure it continues to be protected. So they decided to dissolve their trust and to convey out all of their holdings. So much of it went to the Wildlands Trust.
Wow.
And a number of different parcels went to us. I think we've got
But
3
they're
or 4 or
smaller
5. They're
parcels.
smaller parcels. Because, they understand that we don't have much administrative support either. So as we start to pick up from the cluster zoning, more and more conservation restrictions, it's going to put more pressure on us to actually monitor and supervise
For sure.
these lands.
Yeah.
But anyway, they did give us a number of parcels, some of them on Randolph Avenue, down by St. Michael's Church. There's some little gems of land that are kind of tucked away there. And John Cronin was instrumental in inventorying all the
Definitely.
lands that they held and all the lands that we hold, because the Conservation Commission itself holds land, actually
Right.
deeded land, in addition to the conservation restrictions. And there is an inventory, I think Kathy has it, John Cronin put it together. So we have that. It goes back to, I think, the 50s. And I can bring it in, but last year's annual report, I put in it a little history of when it started and who the original grantors were. And I think it started in like the 60s, the early 1960s. And they were really the stewards of a
Definitely.
lot of land. So the Wildlands Trust now does it. And what was it, a year and a half ago? Peter Jeffries, Ted Wendell, John Cronin, put a dinner together for us, and they paid for it, actually, at the Steel and Rye. And they brought in the folks from the Wildlands Trust. And it was wonderful. It was just to exchange ideas and
Yeah.
interests and get to know them. I thought it was a wonderful idea. Great success.
I used to live in Plymouth, so I'm very familiar with the Wildlands Trust. They're a wonderful organization. That's very exciting that they help with our conservation land here in town.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I was much impressed with them.
We could possibly do similar types of work with them, having been down there to a couple of workshops. It might be interesting sometime to have a discussion about
Right.
what it is that they might be able to do with us
Right.
for our existing conservation lands, recognizing the limitations that we have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a
How
good
we
idea.
can collaborate with them.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we have little pieces of land that you'd never know, like Guile Road, when you pull into the high school off of Canton Avenue. When you take the turn in, immediately to your right is a lot of land, and we have the deed to it.
Really?
Right.
I've noticed there's a path through there.
Yeah, and the problem we had about, 2 years ago, 3 years ago,
Maybe.
was that some trees were falling down there. They were dead and falling. And it was a safety hazard, so we were trying to figure out how do we get the dead trees out of there, because there is a path through there.
Yeah.
Some of the kids walk through there.
Right.
We didn't want the trees falling down, so we
Some
worked with
falling
the...
on the abutting property, too.
That's right.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
That was a
That's right.
big issue.
But DPW was very helpful to us, and we figured out how to get them out of there cooperatively with DPW. It'll work. But that's the kind of thing that administrative, and I don't think Steve Ivas has the time to go around and look to see, you know, where we need to do
Yeah,
maintenance.
It's a lot of work.
That's
It
a
is a lot.
full-time job, yeah.
It is. It is.
John, one of the things to be that.
So wait a minute, did we vote? We didn't?
No, we didn't vote.
Okay, so there was a motion, a second, all in favor? All right,
Okay,
so we now have a
okay.
resolution.
Good.
There's something that related to this conversation that was brought to my attention at one point in time, is the relationship between the town tree warden and the Conservation Commission. And maybe that's something that would be helpful to put on a future agenda as well.
That's true, that is true, that's a good idea. And I confess, I'm ignorant, is it still Branch Lane?
Yes.
It is still, okay,
It is, oh, okay.
okay. All right. All right, next on the agenda is notice of intent, 693, 711 Randolph Avenue. Anybody here? Oh, that's really disappointing, because I was going to quote Cameron there, because that's the issue.
We have it on record.
We have it on record, I'm going to keep that tape. Is that turning?
Yes.
Is it?
Yep.
It is
Yes.
turning, okay. All right, good. We're gonna need that. So
We have it on the other
that's true,
342.
that's true. So I'm embarrassed, I thought that everybody had received a copy of this report from CEI, that's Comprehensive Environmental.
Should we?
Incorporated. And I thought that they were going to be here tonight. I'm surprised that they're not. And it is, Scott, is Jim DeSalle still there?
Yeah.
Ask him if he's here on 711 Randolph Avenue, would you? Thanks, Scott. Because there's a lot of information in this preliminary report or initial report from CEI to us dated January 9th, 2020. Jim, are you doing anything on 711?
Not tonight, no.
Not tonight?
I called Kathy, but I didn't get a call back from her today because Jim Burke's in Savannah, but we're still waiting to hear from the review engineer, I believe. I'm not that up with it.
Well, I have it in my hand. I thought everybody in the commission, it's dated January 9th, which was Thursday. I think I received it on Friday, the 10th. But if you don't have it, it is in the file.
Okay, I'll call Kathy. Like I said, I just got back from vacation and Jim was gone, so
Okay.
I had said that it's on the agenda tonight, and he said just ask for an extension because it's not, we don't have anything.
All right. Well, what I'll do is you make sure you get into the file because it's now part of the public record.
Okay.
And they did do a review. I've got it in my hand. It's like 5 or 6 or 7 pages.
Okay.
8 pages. And this is signed by Matthew Lundstedt and Robert Hartzell. And there are lots of ideas, and some of them are going to fall back on you for follow-up.
Yep.
But they kind of tee up many of the issues.
Okay.
That's why I was interested in what Cameron
I
said
heard you.
tonight.
I saw you slide that
We
in.
got the tape.
Okay, I'll call Kathy on that. Is she out sick?
She's out sick tonight, yes. And she is, but Steve's not going to be back until March
yeah.
1st.
I know.
But we'll put it on the agenda for the February meeting.
Sure.
Does anybody know the date of the second Tuesday of February?
I have it.
Whatever it is, it'll be the second Tuesday.
10th, yeah.
The 10th? Okay.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll make sure that everybody on the Conservation Commission gets this report, this in my hand.
Thank you.
'Cause it's worth spending some time, because there are lots of ideas that are presented, and it will put a little bit of the burden back on the applicant to answer some of the suggestions or comments that are here. All right? There's nothing magical about it. But one of the
looking forward to
issues, and I think the alternatives analysis, just to give you a brief description, because I was kind of hung up on this pier-supported concrete plank bridge as an alternative to the abutment with a culvert. because I'm concerned with the mounding. And essentially, as I read this, it kind of puts it back on the applicant to do some of an alternatives analysis. And he cites back to the Conservation, the Wetlands Protection Act to support that. But so there's not actually an analysis of the mounding. And let me see, it's the northeast corner where Mr. The last house next to the DPW yard,
Right.
because he's got some serious flooding issues, and we've had projects before that, that they were kind of hung up on the water accumulation in that same area. And we had pictures of canoes in the water after a major rainstorm in that very same area. So my concern was always that mounding. So they essentially put it back on the applicant to do the analysis. And I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's something that we need to discuss. But when you see it, we'll put it on the agenda for next meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
So that will continue, number 3 to February 10th, with the assent, as we just heard from Jim DeSell, of the applicant. All right, and that concludes our business, I think. Ned, your additional business?
Yes.
All right, welcome. Tell
Thank
us
you.
what the additional business is.
Ned Corcoran here on behalf of the BID Milton Hospital. We got alerted yesterday, this property is at 107 Highland Street.
We know it well.
Did you get, because I had marked mine, Wendy, I'm sorry, Ned, to interrupt you, but did I give you my copy? I had some marks.
Yes, I
on mine that
apologize.
No, you don't have to.
Is-
So I emailed,
both
that's
it?
his.
Yep.
Thank you. So do you, I'm sorry, Ned, again, do you have this one, Wendy?
I just gave you copies of that.
Are these
I
multiple
think
copies?
I gave you back my copy.
No.
Yes,
Each one of you,
What's that?
yours is,
This one? Oh, it's just that's, so that, you need that?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
that's the same as what you have.
This is the building that right across the street from the hospital?
yes.
You have a copy.
I don't have, no, this is what I brought from my office.
Gotcha.
What I don't have, I don't have any kind of a,
Thank you.
There's
don't
an
have-
additional set of materials that I attached to the
Perfect.
letter,
okay, that's great.
and included in each package. So
Site map, you know.
So the package includes Joe Prondak's letter to the hospital dated today with statutory backup that he cites. A copy of a existing conditions plan showing wetlands, although that have been delineated, although the delineation has not been presented to this commission for approval. That was done in 2018. This was done preliminarily for site planning purposes for the hospital. The hospital owns a 10-acre parcel across Highland Street from its main campus. And on that property are a set of old buildings, including the building at 107 Highland. The next plan is a blow-up of the area in the the northeasterly corner of the property. It's a 40,000 square foot lot. It's a component of the larger area. There's an old dwelling, 107 Highland, a barn, and a carriage shed. The wetland mapping indicates that the wetlands have actually encroached under the barn and under the carriage shed, and the dwelling is within the 100-foot setback from the wetland. We were preparing later this year to file an order of petitions relative to the demolition of 107 Highland. The hospital had filed a demolition request with the Historical Commission. It had filed for a demolition permit. It was referred to the Historical Commission because 107 Highland is an old 1850s dwelling. It's deemed historic. It was the first dwelling owned by an Irish American in Milton. It was part of a farm that he had. It was considered to be somewhat historic by the Historical Commission, and last January the hearing the Historical Commission imposed a 2-year demolition delay on the demolition of that building. Their jurisdiction now extends, if they determine that a building is deemed historic, they can impose a demolition delay of up to 2 years, which they did in this case.
What's the date of that, Ned?
January 2018, it was last.
Of
it was a
18,
year
okay.
ago.
That can be up to 2 years. Did they go to the
They went to the full
2-year
2
mark?
years, with a condition that said if the hospital came back with a plan to replicate the house on the existing foundation, they would
Waive it?
waive the 2-year demolition delay period. The hospital has no such plans, so
Right.
we were preparing just to get through the 2 years, and then yesterday, and so the final piece of information is a structural engineering analysis that was done for the hospital dated December 4 of 18 by Struble Engineering that went through the house. There are some, the pictures are unbelievable, but if you look at pages 17 and 18, you get a sense of the exterior. It's just a hole in the roof, walls are falling in, and a year later, Joe Prondak has determined that it's deteriorated further to the point that it's now an imminent safety threat. And so yesterday, he gave us a heads up, he gave the hospital heads up that he was going to be issuing a demolition order for immediate action, understanding that there is the wetlands implications. I emailed John and Kathleen Bowen immediately yesterday to request a matter be put on tonight. In the interim, we received Joe's letter today, ordering the immediate demolition. Jim DeSalle has put together a fairly simple erosion control plan relative to, which is the close-up of the site, to put silt barrier all the way around the 3 sides. There is a driveway that comes in to the right-hand side of the building. We would stage equipment on the driveway, presumably just pluck and the building as you're demolishing it, put it into dumpsters and take it out. Probably a 1-day, 2-day demolition process at most. The hospital's in the process of securing a contractor to perform the demolition. And so as soon as that happens, they'll be ready to go. But we wanted to alert the commission. We'll file whatever other paperwork is necessary to manage your file, but we didn't have time to wait until February to put this on for a more standard process.
Ned, have you informed the neighbors this is about to happen?
No. They were notified a year ago of the request for the demolition because there was a public hearing with respect to that. We have not notified the neighbors in the last 24 hours that this demolition is imminent. That's something that I'll speak with Rich Fernandez about tomorrow and ask him to reach out to the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, who's Rich?
Rich Fernandez is the president of the hospital. He is the one who's addressed with the letter from Mr. Prondak today.
All right. Well, we're always very sensitive to public safety issues, and we certainly will do nothing to interpose a delay. However, we got this letter today, and Ted, I mean, Ned, you've been, very good. You emailed me right
You're
away.
right, it's dated today.
Today, and I have to, the emergency component of it, I've got a question mark on it because it says this building has been unused and uninhabited for at least 14 years. And it also says that you must begin to remove this building and make it safe by 12 o'clock tomorrow. And that's like, wait a minute, it's been there 14 years. And you were coming in with a demolition plan?
Sometime later this year. But apparently through the winter, and both Chief Grant and Fire Chief Grant has concurred
I saw Chief Grant's.
with this, that Mr. Prondak has determined that this is in need of immediate removal. Cannot wait until we come back before the commission in February. I know that you have a site walk scheduled on another matter for the 25th.
Right.
You know, I had suggested that perhaps the commission take a site walk so they can see the condition itself, at least in the email that I sent yesterday.
Of that building?
But that building is in such bad
Right.
condition.
It's-
I think
My
it's-
estimation,
It's not the building. It's,
that's what I was asking for clarification on.
No, with respect to the notion of where
The
the,
encroachment of the wetlands?
yeah.
and where the erosion control measures would be set up.
Yeah, I mean, this is an odd situation for us because it obviously needs to come down. Although it does say you must begin to remove this building or make it safe by 12 o'clock noon. It doesn't say it has to come down tomorrow at noon, but you got to do something to keep people out. Further, no person shall be allowed to enter the building for any purpose, and you must take steps to prevent any person from so entering. I understand that's the public safety part of it, but I would like to weigh in without delaying anybody, because the wetland actually goes underneath the building.
No,
Not this
Not
one.
this
not
one.
this one.
No, no, I'm not,
It's under the barn. The
Yeah,
barn-
right.
No, the barn is not subject to this
oh,
demolition.
I see, okay.
It's only the,
I
it's
thought
only
it
the
was everything
dwelling.
was coming down.
No, I'm sorry, make that clear. It's only the dwelling that is subject to this order.
A building.
What's that?
It's a building.
A building.
The
Yeah,
building with the
107.
number 107 on it, on the.
So what are the other two buildings?
The other one is a barn that's structurally fairly sound, is not in imminent danger. And the long, narrow one is a carriage, I think I have photographs.
Shed.
It's a carriage shed. This is taken from the Mackless Historic Site.
Just
Oh, that's it,
like at First Parish.
Right.
right, okay.
Oh, that's sizable. Yeah. Mr.
Is that in
Cochran?
pretty good shape, Ned, the shed itself?
They're solid enough that they're not in imminent danger. And because they're both now, the wetlands is now encroached into the footprint of each building, the sensitivity with which we would have to go about working with the commission on a plan for removal and protection of the wetlands would be significant, and we wouldn't, you know, because there's no imminent danger, we're not.
That's a separate matter from what's
Separate
before
matter.
us.
And, you know, that's something we haven't even begun to think about. It's a plan that would have to come in, would have to clearly
Correct.
identify type of equipment, where and how you access the materials, et cetera, et cetera. So, no intent at this point to address those. What we'd simply want, you know, we've got a erosion control barrier that's set up around the dwelling, which is the number 107, and that's the only building that would be.
When we did the Hendry's permit for demolition, we were very concerned with where they put their equipment and the direction in which the debris would be removed. So I think we can weigh in very quickly. And by the way, this is not on the agenda, but for public meeting purposes, if it's a public safety issue and it's emergency, we can do this administratively. But I'd like to have some sense of where the erosion control barriers are and where the equipment is going to be. This might be more means and methods from your demo contract.
If you look at the existing driveway, which is, if you're looking from Highland Street in, it's on the right-hand side of the house. And what we would propose is the erosion control wraparound about 20 feet off the back of the house. And then,
Is that a property line, the dark line, or what?
no, that's the erosion control.
That is the.
That is the erosion control.
I get it, okay.
So I can show you better. I know it's a little difficult, we did it this last minute.
This line.
This line here is the
Yeah.
erosion control. And
Okay.
then it hugs the 25-foot no disturb and back in here. And what we would propose is we get the machine back in here and then back in the dumpsters
Mm-hmm.
and then just start here and pick and fill up the dumpster, take it out, bring a new one in and just move this way.
Has there been any asbestos abatement analysis?
No.
Well, you can't, I mean, the demo contractor would be crazy to go in there and not know if there's asbestos there.
I don't think there's anything in there,
I don't
Down to
think
the slab?
Yeah, I don't think that,
I mean, I know it's old, but that old horsehair plaster is filled with
I think the picture's pretty
Not
much,
asbestos, it's filled with lead and it's filled with other things. but
yeah, there's
not
probably,
asbestos.
there's probably,
There's some.
yeah, there is some stuff there. I don't know, it's a good question.
And it does look like it's right down to the left.
But I think that's something, generally, the demo contractor kind of has to go through and clear it, and that's part of their responsibility.
And
That's,
then testing.
I
out.
agree
Because they'll
with, I
need a
agree
demo.
with you, but that's a big risk for
Yeah.
a demo contractor to take. Because if it's there, they'll have to eat it. I mean, the responsibility, if it's friable, it gets into the atmosphere.
Yeah, they may, there's different things that they can do. They may have to wet it down, they may have to kind of load it into a container and
But
cover
where
it
they
and
put
haul it
it?
away. Yeah,
They
that's,
dispose of it?
it's a lot of stuff that, demo contractor would be required
It's not
to.
that big a house. Can you enclose it in plastic like they do sometimes, the whole house? So it doesn't get in the air and it,
It'll all depend on what the building inspector requires for the demo permit.
Like I said, this just came up.
Yeah, I mean-
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
You're asking very good questions, Joe, but the building commission is going to oversee the issuance of the permit and oversee, obviously, the demolition.
I'm just glad to see this being done. It's long overdue.
So how do we respond to this? It's an administrative action, a public safety emergency. It's just like when there was a, down by Font Pond, there was a fire in the transformer. You just gotta get them in and get them out administratively.
Yeah, my suggestion is if the commission votes, assuming the commission votes to approve this, it would be done under the emergency certificate. What I suggested was that I send a copy to these gentlemen tomorrow morning, the correct form, have us fill it out, and then send it to you. It's kind of an odd situation where you do
I think you have to
that.
send it to DEP too.
That's true. But filling it out, there's a lot of things that it's easier for us to figure out and fill in the blanks and then to send it to you for certification, for a signature. A lot of it's, who's doing the contract work, the time, deed references and that sort of thing. So I think, knowing you're a volunteer board, I think it's kind of a courtesy. We can prepare that document and send it to you, have you review it.
We thank you for that. That is true. I agree with you. But my concern is that there should be something in there if we're going to, certify this as a public safety emergency under the emergency provisions under the Wetlands Protection Act. There should be some reference that it's the contractor's responsibility to determine if there is asbestos there, and if so, to abate it properly in accordance with the DEP regs.
Yep.
Might want to broaden that, any hazardous.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yes.
Yep.
Yeah, because I don't know, are there oil tanks on site, or do you know?
Not that I know of.
See, that's the point, nobody knows.
Don't, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but that would be another surprise, oh, look at that. So, yeah, I agree with Arthur's suggestion that it's not just asbestos, it's any
Any
hazardous
hazardous,
material.
Yep.
Right, that it be properly abated and disposed of, so it would have to go to a licensed site disposal.
But that's part of the demolition permit. They require all
Yeah,
that.
they'll require all that stuff as the demolition permit. And obviously, the building inspector's well aware of it and on top of this, so he'll require that.
and last thing is what you're calling an intermittent stream. I wouldn't necessarily call that intermittent. It's always wet back there. I mean, I know, I live on Highland Street. It's always wet, so that goes all the way from
Back of
almost the
Winter Valley.
corner, yeah, down to Winter Valley and then up that way. So I think you should be aware of that.
So just call it a stream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's gotten bigger since they blocked up going into Winter Valley. Their own, they cause their own grief.
And where did we walk? Where's the driveway that we just walked in?
It's on the other side of these two houses. Remember there was the garage, that huge garage, as we walked in on the left-hand side?
Yes.
This is the back.
The driveway you probably went into was to the gray house in the back.
Yes.
It's like a 50s or
Yeah.
40s
Correct.
ugly thing.
And by Branch
And
Lane's
then,
house.
and then, right, and then we walked up to Winter Valley.
Yep.
Sorry, I stopped.
All right,
So then
so,
what are you proposing you want to do right now?
We want to move forward with demolition.
Like immediately, tomorrow, this week? or-
Well, he's got to get the contract on board, he's got to coordinate with the building commissioner with respect to what is necessary under the permit. We'll file the emergency certificate with you and with the EP. And
So is it essentially that you are seeking from us tonight approval of the erosion control line? Is that,
no, I think that they're looking for our approval that this is an emergency situation.
I'll move.
Therefore, that you have to submit the appropriate documents for us to approve it as an emergency administrative action under the Wetlands Protection Act, because it does allow for that, as we've done in the past. But Scott, we're going to depend upon you to put everything into the certification.
Yeah, I think
That
that's the
includes
easiest
the
thing to
re-
do, we'll compile all the information, send it to you, review it, and if, and presumably you'd authorize that work to happen. But it's the only situation that I've found that it's easier for the applicant to fill out the materials to assist the commission, just because of the compiling that information is easier
Agreed.
for this side than.
And just make sure you protect us on the removal of hazardous waste or
Yep.
asbestos and
Yep.
licensed site disposal, and et cetera.
But I think we probably need a vote that based on the material given to us now, the photographs and the letters from the town, that we agree that it's an emergency.
Yes.
And that people should go forward as necessary. I mean,
Right, to
I
protect
think
the
that would
public
be a
safety.
motion.
I'll
that I-
second your motion.
Okay.
Wendy?
Yeah, I'm ready to vote. No questions?
Do you want to look at the building tomorrow? We could walk around carefully or something. Do you need to do anything like that? I know the building.
And you've got the photos, right? But if you feel more comfortable, you can do
I
it.
mean, I've driven by it 100 times, but,
Everyone has.
yeah,
With the big X on the front.
you can park,
right.
you can park in the hospital parking lot and walk down the driveway. It wouldn't go near the house itself, but you can kind of get around and see it.
Well, there's a driveway to the left of it.
That's right.
Maybe what we could do is not vote on it and wait the application for emergency certification that would come from you. Because if you do, and you're certainly entitled and it's warranted to make sure you see it. I know it because I've been in the area so many times. But I think it's appropriate if you'd like to see it, if you can do it tomorrow. And what we do tonight is just well,
How about if you
Maybe we
vote
could
to
do just-
authorize
right.
the chair to sign
Right, because it is an administrative action.
on behalf of...
So why don't you do that?
That's what Judith's commentary was.
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't we do that? We'll take a vote to authorize the chair of the commission to issue an administrative order upon receipt from the applicant. And then, in the meantime, you'll be able to see it. They're not going to get it until, probably late tomorrow, noon.
And that's consistent with what you said.
Yeah, and Wendy, I'm available tomorrow if you want to meet me. We could both walk around carefully, and if you have any additional comments you wanted to
Right.
make, you could.
And I'll call you before I sign anything.
But I don't think my concerns really pertain to conservation issues, but I am curious what the Historic Commission has said about this. Do they have an opportunity to still be a voice in the matter?
No, the state's, the town's historical regulations allow the building commissioner to override the determination of the delay.
I see.
If he makes a determination that there's an imminent danger.
Right. And I certainly don't feel like I'm in a position to say that's, the pictures that I see here, that's not an imminent danger. It looks it,
Yeah.
since he
They
can see
were
through the
copied, the
roof.
chair of the, Steve O'Donnell, who's the chair of the commission, was copied on.
And the
this.
fire chief is also
And the
assented.
fire chief agrees with that. There's been some conversation, a year ago, when the we had the hearing, and the commission issued the delay. Joe Prondak, at that time, was concerned that the building would continue to deteriorate, and at some point, he was going to have to declare an emergency for the sake of demolition. And I know that he has been in communication with Steve O'Donnell with respect to that.
Okay.
I don't know any further details of their communications, but I know that Steve is aware of that, and I know that he was made aware of, because he received a copy of this letter by email. And I sent him, today, I sent him a copy of the other materials that I handed you tonight.
Other than the 2-year demolition delay, has the Historic Commission made any movement or efforts towards preserving the property?
It's not the commission's job to preserve. They impose a delay to try and encourage
Others?
property owners to find alternative ways to preserve. This building has been vacant, I think, as Joe's letter says, something like 14 years, at least 14 years.
Oh, I'd say
He's gonna say more than
The
that.
hospital purchased the property in '99. The end of the '90s, they purchased the entire 10 acres. And for the purpose of trying to figure out what the hospital might do with future growth, with whatever. At one time, they had a purchase and sale agreement a number of years ago for a small subdivision. That fell through, and they've been holding it. And so they've got process to go through that they're stepping into with neighbors, with the town, as to what might happen with that property. But in the meantime, I think there were 4 prior applications for demolition. In each case, the commission determined that it was deemed historic and therefore subject to potentially a delay. You then, in the historical commission process, you have to follow through with an application for the permit to demolish, and you have to describe why it is that the building is no longer capable of being saved in order to short-circuit a 2-year demolition. The hearing was in January. I had submitted a series of materials, including this structural report that I've given you. And they determined that despite the fact that it was in difficult condition, that the building, the hospital ought to be encouraged to at least replicate the house on the site. There's no way structurally to use anything in the house at all. It's completely rotted. There's a hole in the roof, the sides have caved in. I mean, it's just not capable of being reutilized. But they thought it was appropriate to encourage the hospital to replicate on site. And in that case, that's not going to happen.
Now I'm lost, because I'm not sure where jurisdictions start and stop. But when you say the hospital, this is the Historic Society that's...
The Milton Hospital, BID Milton Hospital owns the property.
Right.
The Historical Commission issued,
Stop demo, I understand
imposed a
that.
demolition delay,
Right.
2 years.
But now we've got a public safety issue. We're not, I don't think we're in a position to say that's not a public safety.
No, they-
Non-jurisdictional for us.
The public safety part of it,
Right.
right. I mean, it's jurisdictional because of the location, but I agree with you that that's something that we couldn't suggest when the fire chief says it's a problem, the building inspector does.
The historical regulation provides an exception to the 2-year delay, which is a determination by the building commissioner that there is a situation like this, where the building needs to be demolished, and he can step in and impose that immediate obligation to demolish, despite the
The
demolition.
2-year delay. I followed all of that. My question was, how do you get to the point of encouraging the hospital to replicate? Is that
It's-
just a wish list?
That's a wish list, because their only jurisdiction is to determine, A, that it's historic, and B, to impose a demolition delay. They do it to try to encourage either replication or relocation or something else. But they can't, they have no legal jurisdiction to stop demolition. Because if you can simply wait out the 2-year delay and then demolish.
Right. Okay, understood. Yeah, I was just looking for the source of this
Yeah,
encouragement.
no, and it's, in Milton's bylaw is, the 2 years is a longer term than many other communities. It used to be 9 months, it was changed a couple of years ago.
And the historic issue is non-jurisdictional to this commission.
All right, so then the motion should be to,
Thank you.
the motion would be to approve authority for the chair to issue the administrative order upon receipt of the certification that it's an emergency situation from the applicant. Acknowledging.
Agreeing that it's an emergency.
Correct.
That's your motion?
Yes, it is.
I second it.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye, that's good, okay.
Thank you very much.
That's good, all right, thanks all.
I had a couple of other questions at the end, too.
Excuse me, John, do you want me to leave these with you guys, or the certification of mailings for that Brook Road, or do you want me to?
Yes, yeah, that would be great, thank you very much. I should have asked you for
Oh, I
that.
forgot them.
Beautiful, great, thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Back in October, there was Wollaston Golf Club was going to give us $22,000 because of the trees. They decided they didn't want to put back there. Did we get that money? Do you know?
I don't think we did, at least I didn't hear from
Thinking it's 3
Kathy.
months.
She usually she does that, so, okay, that's a follow-up for.
Yeah, from Wollaston.
John, if I may follow up on what Judith has put on the table. As we are going to get the circulation of the budgets,
Right,
it would also be interesting to have a circulation of the tree bank
Yeah.
in its entirety. So I don't think any of us have track of that these days.
no, I don't think so, and I think that Kelly Cardoza indicated that she and Kathy have some agreement as to what the number of trees are. I don't know what they are, but I think they've worked it out, and they're in agreement as to how many trees are owed by the golf course. And I think Kathy's got the other ones as well. But you're right, that should be circulated, because I sure don't know what's in it.
Yeah, okay.
And there's probably two aspects of that. One is actual trees, and the other is virtual, well, 3 actual trees, virtual trees, and monies.
Right.
Right.
And the money will be in the budget. You'll see that.
Okay,
And although we might not see the line item, because it's done by account,
gotcha. So it's buried in one of the accounts?
yes.
Okay,
But
thank you.
I think I'm trying to visualize it, and I think that there is it's a different account than the fines, because the fines is 91,000, and that's really buttressed by the $75,000 fine that we got from 88 Milton Street. And that's what gave us the big boost to 91,000. And I think the rest of it is somewhere around 60,000 with the accumulation. Remember the dam fund? That was 1 Granite Avenue, or 2 Granite Avenue, whatever the number is. That was, John Flatley had come in and suggested that there be for the public access to the river. He was going to do a rooftop deck for the public, which was a security nightmare. So when he backed off it, he said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $10,000. Because at the time, we were looking at destroying the dams to allow a fish ladder, but the problem with it was the release of the PCBs. So we just call it the dam fund. And so there's $10,000 in that one as well. So, right, okay, so the tree bank, the budget,
And also, we did the fine for the pipe in the wetland, over on Milton Street, on the Burr Estate. And we voted $1,800 fine. I don't know if we got that either. Remember, there was a pipe
Right.
in the wetland? That was just,
Right.
that was, I think, November we did that.
What was the number of Milton Street, you remember?
On the Burr Estate, and the number is 175 Milton Street.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, and then finally, John, you're not involved in this, so I'm just going to say administratively, we were going to be talking about Woodlot Drive, but we don't have, which is 3 of us. So let's kick that over till our next meeting, and we'll just discuss the fine possibility we've been talking about, the small fine, and the lighting as well. Okay. We'll wait on that.
I saw those lights this past week, and they are very glaring. Ones on
You know,
Curry
they're the
Road.
same ones that are over by the expressway. I don't
Yeah,
know,
they
same
are.
over
It's
there.
exactly the same ones in East Milton,
Yeah. Yeah.
which are, that's
Are they?
pedestrian safety.
That's all.
Go ahead.
Dams. I wasn't on the commission when they were probably last visited, but at last year's MAC conference, I sat in on restoration work that's been done mostly in the Taunton area of the state with the removal of dams and the establishment of fish ladders and so on down the line. And that may be something that we could talk with the Neponset group about, because the PCBs don't collect evenly. They collect in areas, pockets, depending upon how the currents are.
Right.
And sometimes people will say, well, say that they're PCBs, you can't do anything, when in reality you can, depending upon where the PCBs are and where you want to position an opening in the dam, construction of a fish ladder, so on down the line. So things have really moved very significantly. And we all know what the mill world was like in the Taunton River, in that whole New Bedford Fall River, Taunton area. And if they can do it, there must be some,
Yeah.
because this is a beautiful river. It's just been degraded to the point where anything that's restorative in nature that can be done to it would be a tremendous advantage to the town and to the wildlife.
Yeah, one of the things that, this is another administrative thing, this took place probably 2 years ago. EPA came in, and they were doing the stormwater discharge analysis, that the municipalities have to pay for now. And they said, oh, we want to do some testing in the Neponset River. And we're testing on both the Boston side and the Milton side.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, that's great. And when you take your boring, because I said, what do you means and methods? Because I was dealing with somebody at DEP, and they were speaking kind of on behalf of the EPA. And I said, so when you do your borings, will you backfill it? Because we don't want it, leaching out because of the proximity
Right.
of the smelt hatchery, which is the largest in New England, I guess. At least that's what Coastal Zone Management told us about, 5 or 6 years ago. And it's right beyond the dam. It's right where remember the
Yeah.
condo, that, the smaller building that became a 2-unit condo? And there's a bridge that goes over, this is the Walter Baker area.
Oh, yeah.
They condominiumized, and we permitted it. And so it came up at that point, because right there is this hatchery.
Really?
And the problem is that the work, and this became an issue when they were doing they were trying to repaint the
Bottom of the bridge.
trestle, the
trestle
bridge that
itself.
went over into the
Steel.
factory. It was a steel bridge.
Right.
So we said, okay, that's great, but you got to encase it and do a negative pressure, so that they were sandblasting. And we didn't want any of the sandblasting to go out into the river, to fall into the river. So, which they did. So that's a pretty sensitive area. So that was, fast forward a couple of years, and now this is a couple of years ago, I said, can you backfill the coring, the sampling holes? And they said, no. I said, well, what do you mean, no? I mean, that's what your job is, to make sure that you're looking for PCBs, you go where you think they are, and you're telling me you're not going to backfill it, just put sand in it, but anything. And they said, no, I tell you what, we won't do the Milton side, we'll just do the Boston side.
Is it a matter of money? Because
I don't know.
they backfill offshore cavities.
Yeah, it was pretty simple. So in any event, they said they did the testing, and that's when they came up, and again, it's probably 2 years ago, but Mother Brook is like the source of a lot of the PCBs. And it's where the Mother Brook comes down, this is what, Hyde Park, I guess? That comes
The old paper
into.
mills were.
Yeah,
Yes.
bedroom and such, yeah.
Right, so what they said was, we're going to look now to see whether or not the EPA will identify this as a Superfund site.
Right.
Because, you know, if you're a designated Superfund, there's still money there on the federal side. But they said, oh, you got to get in line, you know, the designation, it's, you know, take, you know, 2 or 3 years before they decide whether or not to designate you as such. But that has a lot to do with where the PCBs are. And there is some kind of a mapping.
Yes.
Although they didn't come onto the Milton side, I guess. They told me they weren't. They're just going to do the Boston side of the river. But they apparently have mapped where they are. So that would go a long way. If we could get that, you know, mapping, that would go a long way towards, you know, what can we do for fish ladders and,
Yep.
you know, changing the dams.
Maybe we can bring this up with Steve when he's
Yeah.
returned from vacation.
Yes,
It's sort of an ongoing,
correct.
The other thing we did, Wendy, with the smelt area is as the water flows, you know, under Adams Street and the smelts are on the right-hand side, we planted a bunch of trees, one of which is the hackberry, which is native, and it gotten really huge. It's done so well there on the corner. And it shades the whole hatchery, which is what they need, the little
Oh,
eggs
really?
when they're spawning, yeah. It's done well, that
That's,
hackberry.
that's right, that was your suggestion.
Yeah, yeah, and we did a couple of dogwoods, but, you know, the landscape people, they do that mounding up the dirt
Yes.
around
The beehives, yeah.
the beehive, and it killed the 2 dogwoods, you know, just ignorance.
your point is very important because the trees overlapping the river
Yeah,
cool the water.
uh-huh.
In an era of global warming, that's becoming
Yeah.
even more important.
Yes, yeah.
And they also foster insect, which provides food for different types of fish life, possibly not the smelt, but other fish life would, and that would bring in bird life.
Yes.
Your eagles are
Yeah.
gonna eat healthy fish, they're not gonna
Yeah.
eat what survives at the bottom of the
Right.
plaza right now.
That's true.
Yeah, boy, those pictures of Australia right now, oh my gosh.
That's scary. All right, so I have one additional business item, and that is that we've been asked to put on the agenda for February. We've been asked to put on the agenda, I've extrapolated, and I'm suggesting we put it on for February, the reconsideration of a fine that we imposed at 700 Canton Avenue, because he thinks it was inappropriate.
That's the fence.
That's the fence. That's, I think it's Mr. Johnson, I'm not sure. But he would like us to reconsider that fine. I had asked, in light of that, since it was not on this month's agenda, I asked Kathy not to cash the check. He did send in a check for $1,000, and that was the fine.
Okay.
But he asked us, you know, to consider or reconsider our vote, but he said, here's the check, and then please reconsider. So I'd like to do that on the February agenda.
How did he ask for this reconsideration? Is there like a formal appeal process that we have, or was
We
there a
don't.
letter or
It's
phone call, or?
Yes,
Yes, what? All of the above?
yes.
Does he base it on anything at all? Oh, we'll talk about it next time.
No,
It's okay.
no, we won't,
Okay.
because there's one other matter that I would like to, it's a personnel matter, so we'd have to do it in executive session. So if there is nothing else for additional business, then I would make a motion, oops.
This really is archaic, you know.
Yeah, I know it is. I know it is.
Come on,
Is it backwards?
we'll find out. It shouldn't be.
No, not that way.
No, it's, There we go.
All right, all right. So I would make a motion and propose to go into executive session for a discussion of a personnel matter, but also, as part of the motion, to not go back into public session, so this would end the public session.
So moved?
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Good, we're done. Thank you very much.
So we turn off this as well?